time. All it takes to play havoc with your life and trigger an unwanted medical emergency is one faulty or substandard device.
It's very, very important that we use only regulatory certified products because we are dealing with the human body.
Patients should be more educated, should be more encouraged to ask about the devices which are going to be implanted upon them.
In India, around 2,000 kinds of medical devices are sold, from humble reading glasses and gloves to critical MRI machines and implants. But only 22 of them are currently under any direct regulatory supervision by the Drug Controller General of India's office.
We need standards, and the standards have to be strong. They cannot be fishy, they cannot be wishy-washy. They have to be strong, have to create the strength. It has to be unbiased, it has to be overarching, it has to be overruled.
From performance testing and usability to non-clinical testing, these devices should pass standard tests of validation. Only then, medical professionals should use them on patients.
At the end of the day, we are looking for positive patient outcomes, and we need predictability of outcomes. So to ensure that, we must have regulations and standards which will ensure that the way I take that injection or the way I consume, whether it's a medical device or a use of medical device or a drug, is consistent no matter where it is. And that is where I talk about predictability. That's important. But what is required at the end of the day is all just consistent standards.
As India works towards affordable healthcare systems, the Indian medical device industry needs to be pushed to make quality healthcare and patient safety a norm.
I welcome you all to India Demands Safety Standards. Ladies and gentlemen, this campaign is going to aim and focus on creating consumer awareness with regards safety compliant equipment, products, devices and technology. To open house, I'm going to invite forward the Vice President and Managing Director of UL South Asia, Mr. Suresh Sugavanam.
As UL, as a 122-year-old safety science company, what we are looking for is furthering the safety of human beings, right? Safe living and working environments. And in that context, we have initiated this effort, which is India Demands Safety Standards. And we believe the time now is right for us to start talking about this. When you start looking at safety, it is an absolute bare minimum that every citizen of India must demand, and we feel that the timing is right for this now. And what would it take? What it takes, whether it's a small and medium enterprise manufacturing a dental X-ray machine today, or it is a large conglomerate which is trying to manufacture and even design products in India, what is still required is everybody must comply with a bare minimum standard of quality, because that way you then are able to play at a much better scale rather than trying to play only for India as a market. So when you start to look at what's potential for India in the global medical or the healthcare industry, that's a very different equation, and that has to be the vision. But to us, whether it's internal or external, it all starts with an absolute bare minimum. From our perspective, the first starting point has to be safety standards.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for the keynote address 1. The speaker I'm now about to introduce lends substance to this evening by his sheer presence here. Dr. Naresh Trehan.
It's not only the healthcare providers or the planners or the doctors or the owners, but it hasn't actually permeated into our DNA. If you look at it, you're driving down the street or you're driving on a highway, you'll see two kids standing up in the back seat on a highway waving to you. You know when the brakes are jammed, these kids are going to bust their heads. So if we do not have that basic consciousness in our culture or in our education to say we must look for safety, then whatever happens, happens from our own volition. Is that like when we get exposed or we have set standards, then we try to meet them. But it is not that universally that demand is there. So first is the point that the public should feel that they need these safety standards when they go to a facility. They should be aware what are the things that people are providing for the money they're going to charge them for the disease they're going to actually get treatment for. Unless this awareness comes, this cycle will not progress further, because what is the incentive for an institution or a hospital to introduce safety standards if people don't even appreciate it? There are today, across the board, still devices available, still IV fluids available where there is no standardization, and you can see how much hijacking is taking place. What mechanisms do we have to be able to go drill down to the last person who's manufacturing in some village IV fluids and branding them the way they want to brand them, and you have fungus growing out of them? Then God save us. So I'm saying that there has to be a crossover. The crossover has to be that if we are going to provide affordable healthcare in India, we cannot just find that the highest end of consumables or IV fluids or pharmaceuticals are priced at a level where it makes it impossible for us to give the end product. So I think this fact that we do it numerically without compromising the standards is going to be the key to all of it. So with that, I just wanted to communicate to you, there's no question, standards, safety standards, pride in delivery are all married together.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for Keynote Address 2. I'm going to invite Shobhana Kamineni. She was named Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals Enterprise Limited in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for her.
Access to healthcare is a right that every citizen of the world deserves, but it's equally important to ensure that the healthcare delivered is of high quality and bears the seal of the highest standards of patient safety. So world over, safety standards have become a key priority, and rightfully so. The entire fraternity must move towards the industry equilibrium, where safety is omnipresent, intrinsic to the entire healthcare delivery spectrum. Medical devices are a crucial link in the healthcare delivery chain, and any healthcare safety plan must take this into account. So in this, we have to start converging and seeing what we need, the safety standards, the regulations. In India, it's easy for us. In many of our hospitals, we follow the world standards. We have the ISI mark. But we should move towards a great regulatory framework which encourages hospitals to use medicines of the highest quality. I do believe in generics. I do believe in the price advantage that we should do for our industry. But I don't believe in doing it at the cost of even one patient life. And if we really want India to be the highest on the highest pinnacle, on world standard healthcare, we cannot make those compromises.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to invite forward the Honorable Chief Guest of this evening, Mr. K.B. Agarwal, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare.
I know that you all are here concerned with the office of the DCGI, especially in terms of the standardization of the medical devices or the pharma industry and the regulatory system. We are shifting the DCGI office to make it online. So you will have a seamless import system. Other than this, whatever be the remaining functions, be it the clinical trials, be it the routine functioning in the office, I don't think that we will take more than 6 months to make the entire office of the DCGI online. As regards your safety standards and regulatory system for medical devices, our Joint Secretary, Mr. K.L. Sharma, who is working very hard to find some way out that till the time our bill actually becomes a reality in terms of act, can there be a way out to provide what the industry wants within the existing framework of the Drug and Cosmetics Act and rules thereof?
Standards should be a dynamic thing. They should keep on evolving.
Welcome back. You're watching UL Presents India Demands Safety Standards. To carry forward the agenda of safer healthcare, Safer India, a panel discussion was organized to help stakeholders, decision makers and policy makers understand the gaps and weaknesses that currently exist and challenges faced in implementing safety standards. The panelists for this discussion were Mr. K.L. Sharma, the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare; Sudhanshu Pandey, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry; Dr. Ashok Seth, Chairman, Fortis Escorts Heart Institute; Sunil Khurana, President and CEO of BPL Medical Technologies; Pawan Chaudhary, Managing Director of Vigon India; and Upayan Sen Gupta, the Vice President and GM of Health Sciences at UL.
Dr. Seth, we want to set up the conversation a little bit for the lay people who will be joining, because of course this is a very, as we said, you have experts in the audience here, but for people to understand, what is it we're talking about when we talk about the need for safety standards and quality?
We must understand that quality healthcare, as we talk about, has to be a safe healthcare. While it's affordable, affordability does not compromise on quality. So it becomes efficient but quality-based healthcare. And every treatment that we offer is to do with some drug or some device. And if it's a device, then the quality of the device impacts totally the outcome, the subsequent life, the well-being, and how long is the treatment going to last for. Unfortunately, as science and technology has grown, the regulations should have been in place to monitor these more effectively, because patients' life is at stake.
And Mr. Sharma, what is it that the Health Ministry feels are the sort of bottlenecks and challenges? Because obviously there is this need for a regulatory framework, is something we're hearing across the board.
In the Indian context, as of now, in medical devices particularly, maybe all the standards are not developed. But it is not that there is a complete vacuum in terms of standards also. We have the standards which have been set up by the Bureau of Indian Standards. We have, in other cases where there are no standards set up by the Bureau of Indian Standards, adopted the standards or recognized the standards set up by ISOs. And in other cases, we are acknowledging the standards that have been set up by the industry worldwide. So with the perspective of patient safety in view, there is adoption of those standards. We need not invent everything every time we have to do it. So the time right now is for harmonization, adoption, and globalization of those standards.
And it's interesting because Mr. Sharma is also essentially saying you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Mr. Pandey, there is a debate to be had about what is the minimum sort of best practice or best quality of standards that you can, there is some wriggle room there. And in terms of looking at the entire domestic scenario, you have to weigh the sort of cost benefits as well.
In Indian scenario, many standards on medical devices also existed, but they are not mandated to be complied mandatorily. As a result of which, what happened in the market, all kinds of standards are floating. Now government is coming out very clearly that since it involves patient safety, and internationally, I must add here, you are also given that if in addition to safety, you can prove that additional safety is required in your case, in any country's case, then you are mandated to even authorize that additional safety standard. And nobody can challenge. So therefore, challenge for India is to have that, as Dr. Seth said, have a very robust kind of and very dynamic regulatory regime which catches up with the pace with which technology is changing.
It's an interesting point. And Mr. Khurana, I mean, with BPL medical devices, we've also been talking a little bit about some of the challenges that crop up in the kind of scenario we have right now.
There is a lack of clarity today for a manufacturing side on the standard, that this is minimum what needs to be attained, right? We have a challenge on the even R&Ds also. It has not been still at the level what is seen outside. So clearly those are the areas which we today feel challenged. At the same time, if you look at the ecosystem, I mean, just compare auto industry. How auto industry has gone, and today the products made here are world class. So we clearly are looking for some direction, because if I want to just go for a C mark, I'll go for a C mark. Somebody else says I'll only take a BIS and routine approval. One good practice I've seen, at least in the one area, is the radiation side. We have really progressed very, very well. I mean, I witnessed last 35 years. It was from none to today completely regulated.
You're talking about creating this whole ecosystem, and you were saying earlier there is something to be said about the social movement. Would you want to weigh in on that?
I am fully for standards, and I'm fully for what Mr. Pandey very eloquently said, that standards should be a dynamic thing. They should keep on evolving with the help of industry also, with the help of the user. However, no new standard should be brought in accidentally as a market barrier. It should be a quality enhancer, but no advertently or inadvertently, no new marks or standard should come which becomes a market barrier, and then, because then the purpose of the standard is defeated.
When it comes to the extremely high level of standards, you need to have the consumer. The last sort of mile is the stakeholder. The most important stakeholder would be the patient or the consumer. How important is creating that sort of demand?
Yeah, look, I think it goes back to the awareness that we talked about. We as a consumer, anybody as a consumer has to demand absolute safety, right, in the interaction between me, myself and the device and the clinician. And so, look, the pull has to come. As a regulator, all you're doing is basically following the mandate of the people. And the people should be demanding safer healthcare, safer interaction, safer delivery of healthcare. And so for us to raise the profile of the fact that they should demand that should be a right for them.
Yeah.
And the fact that the devices that they interact with should be safe at world-class levels, and the clinicians should be trained in a way that they're able to perform the best, the best procedures with those devices. So it's absolutely imperative to ensure that the patient, the final consumer, is pulling for this.
So on that positive note, we're going to end. I want to thank you all for your participation and give the panelists a round of applause.
We know that standards are a consensus-based document. They just cannot be always a cutting-edge technology, right? The role of regulation and standards is to set a minimum threshold level, and after that, the market actually has to play the role in a very cohesive way. And what at least I realized through this forum is this has given us an opportunity as a community to discuss with the regulators, with the industry, with all the participants to develop, as we put down over here, develop and make better standards for the patients, for our consumers. We have started the first of our series, and we will continue this in a way. We'll carry this forward till India gets the right kind of safety standards. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great evening.
Next week, we shift our focus to the infrastructure sector, throwing light on safe construction practices for both commercial and residential buildings. And if you have a story, opinion, or suggestion for us, please visit www.safetystandards.com.